A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Greg Bondar is back with us, also just back from some overseas travels and with his finger on the pulse of some disturbing developments in worldwide Anglican churches. There have been some big developments, you might have heard even in the news bulletin just gone, talking about some of the challenges in the Anglican Church worldwide. Well, Greg Bondar, the national spokesperson for Christian Voice Australia, and he's the leader of Every Home for Christ in Australia. Greg Bondar, I might say, a special welcome back to 2020.
Oh, thank you, Neil, and welcome back to you, my friend.
Yes, well, appreciate that very much. I've been to Europe and the UK, but you've been, as I understand, you've been to the US, you've been to Europe and Greece, and a little. In a nutshell, where have you been? You've been all over the place.
Yeah, look, I've just taken 27 brothers and sisters of Christ to Turkey, to Greece, and we followed in the footsteps of Paul. And we visited some various, as if you read the book of Acts, especially chapter 16 and what have you, you'll find that Paul had a fairly rigorous journey, 3 journeys in fact. So look, it was very spiritual, very enlightening, and I was amazed at seeing the site, Neil, of where Paul was imprisoned. Absolutely horrific. But look, that'll be a story for another day, Neil, I think.
You know what? I think we could have a lot of conversation, and I didn't actually get to Rome on this visit, but I spent some time a little further north, Saxony region in Germany, where Martin Luther nailed his 95 thesis to the castle church door in Wittenberg. Had a fabulous experience there, as well as visiting Herne Hut. Now, do you know what Herne Hut is famous for? That's the site where the Reformed Moravian Church began some coordinated mission effort post-Reformation, and that really took a long time after Reformation and Counter-Reformation, but yes, a wonderful character, and just wonderful to immerse yourself in a little bit of that Christian history, and I know you are appreciating one who loves those sorts of Christian history issues. Hey, let's talk about what's creating some modern history here, because you've been in Europe, and no secret, you are in fact an Anglican, so you're very interested in what's happening worldwide with the Anglican movement. There's a new Archbishop of Canterbury. What are your thoughts? I already know it's not all that good, it's a bit disturbing here, but what are your thoughts about the new Archbishop of Canterbury?
Neil, it may well be that I'll be nailing some new resolutions on the church doors in London, I've got to tell you, because, Neil, I am absolutely devastated as an Anglican, conservative, yes, admitted. But look, this to me sounds like the theological death of Anglicanism worldwide.
Okay. You know what? It's interesting, isn't it? Personalities do matter. People who are put in charge do matter. They bring with their appointment what you might call baggage. We're just talking about reformers and ones who might not be reformers at all. How do you describe this Sarah Mullally, who's the next Archbishop of Canterbury?
Look, Neil, I have to tell you, it's a big mistake. I think, as I said, it will be the theological death of Anglicanism. Let's just have a quick look at what she stands for now. One, I think personally, former Bishop of London, she's going to actually split the church even further than it already is now. She refers to the Holy Spirit as she. She's all in favour of same-sex relationships. She's all in favour of pro-choice abortion. She won't reinstate Dr. Bernard Randall, who's been blacklisted by the Church of England for saying to a particular group of students that they ought to hold a biblical view of marriage. That's the own Church of England's own doctrine. Now, for goodness sake, is this what we're going to be looking at with the new Archbishop? Neil, I think it's a disaster, and, this may well be, reverting to the old church of, home churching, because what am I going to do as an Anglican now? Neil, I have to sort of look for a new denomination, or help me, God? Really, I'm in trouble, Neil. I'm open to advice.
Well, Greg, it's interesting, isn't it? And if we were looking at the history of the whole Christian church, what makes the history is the debate and the resolution of dreadful conflicts around these sorts of issues. Yeah. And you might well be on the cusp of another one of those big debates that has to happen. It'd be nice if you had a leader who got things right and had a biblical view of the world, and you might expect that as the leader of the Anglican Communion worldwide. But here you are, and as you say, you're an Anglican. What do I do? Do I stay? Do I go? Do you get involved with the battle to save the Anglican Church and bring back a Christian worldview? And that is, clearly you've been wrestling with that.
Yeah, Neil, I have actually, because you see, just coming back from Greece, Corinth, the churches there 2,000 years ago argued amongst themselves. And after 2,000 years, now what have we learned? We're arguing again on theology. Now look, either you're a Bible-believing Christian or you're not. And unfortunately, this Archbishop of Canterbury, the views that he is holding, in my view, are not biblical. Or am I reading the wrong Bible, Neil? So, quite frankly, this is a real lost opportunity for the Anglican Church. I think it may well be, a situation where you'll see the church become irrelevant, and, Neil, you'll also find that it's going to further split Anglicanism. Is that a good thing? No, Neil. So I'm really concerned, and I'm asking people to pray.
Of course, there's already a split church here in Australia, in the Anglican Church. You've got the Southern Cross dimension of Anglicanism, and you've got the more woke version of Anglican churches, and there might be listeners who are just wondering about that and how that all works. And you say, I'm an Anglican, I didn't even know much about it. But I guess most Anglicans do know something about the split. Yes. And they do know something about, how things ought to look, and maybe they don't look that way. Just quickly here, I mean, as you're sharing something, I think, quite deep and personal, what do I do? There'll be others who are saying, what do I do here in Australia? And it's not going to help with the new Anglican Archbishop of the Church of England in the UK being that way. What are your thoughts here? Stay and put in the good fight and wrestle with the issues and argue for a Christian biblical worldview to be instated. What are your thoughts here?
Good questions. Now, because as you know, I'm a political animal as well. Having worked for the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, sometimes you say it's better to be inside of the tent and arguing your way rather than outside. So my view is, if I stay within the church and I start to argue that this is all, theologically incorrect, you get labelled a heretic or you get labelled whatever. The problem I see here is that Anglicans need to stand up and voice their opinions. I don't know where the church is on this. I've heard nothing from the Sydney, Melbourne, all the other Anglican churches Australia-wide on this matter. Now, maybe I know I've just got back from overseas, but the point I'm making here, Neil, is that we as Anglicans need to decide, do we stay with the theology of Anglicanism, and that is, quite frankly, biblically based? If we don't, we're going to have to look at alternatives. Maybe the Grace of the Home Church is back in business again, Neil. I don't know, but I'm asking people to pray, voice their concerns, so that something rational becomes evident in all of this.
Hey, Greg, stay with the UK for a few moments, because I know you've had access to some results from a nationwide survey by a UK charity, National Churches Trust, and talking about churches that might be closing by 2030. This is not a positive one either, but, how does this one look to you?
Well, Neil, are you surprised that churches are closing? In particular, and I'm going to revert to our original discussion, when you've got an archbishop that's totally unbiblical in the opinions that she holds. Now, what's happening in the UK? Now, this is all related to basically the woke church. Over 2,000 churches are predicted to close within the next 5 years. In particular, while some congregations remain positive, they're unsure of their survival, Neil. Now, isn't that interesting? Because, you see, the rural churches are completely going to die out by the looks of things based on this survey. But what I'm surprised at, Neil, is have a look at this. The denominational difference is highlighted. The Methodists being the most uncertain about their future, followed by the Presbyterians. The Baptist and the independent churches also are unsure, with the Anglicans being the most sure of their survival. But the fact is that 4% of the Anglicans don't believe they will survive. This is the UK we're talking about. Don't believe they will survive. But guess what? That 4% represents around about 700 churches, Neil, in England and Wales. So look, is it any wonder that the churches are closing? Denominations are unsure of what's happening to them. Congregations are unsure of where to go, what to do, and we have biblical confusion in terms of a biblical worldview. Look, Neil, the whole thing's a mess, and I'm really concerned about Christianity as we know it, Neil. So we really need to start thinking, broader and more intensively about these issues.
I was in England, and conversations I had, there was a little optimism around what is called this quiet revival.
Correct.
And it might not be to do with the look of church buildings and of congregations at all. And maybe that's hard to track. It's hard to plot. It's hard to be able to quantify just how that is looking. But it just illustrates, and I know you're interested in across these sorts of things, as a society becomes more secular, then the church looks like it only has a role in reflecting levels of sentimentalism, things of the past, and trying to make meaning and purpose of, times of national remembrance, or there's some celebration in there too, but there's a sort of sentimentalism that people attach to the church. Of course, God is not finished with the churches in the UK. He's not finished with the churches here, and the attitude can change quickly. So it's a little bit of a matter of holding on tight and expecting God to move in all of this. Any thoughts here?
Yes, I do, Neil. Look, because quite frankly, I know you're in the UK. So I was in the UK in June, as you know. I was at the Every Home for Christ board meeting in London, and I met with a lot of Christian organisations over there. Whilst they were referring to a quiet revolution, I think you've got to be very careful what that quiet revolution may be, because the real issue is, Neil, that the church is in decline generally. Some churches are growing, but when you say growing, in what respect? You see, Neil, I'm going to ask you the question, and all your listeners, what is the role of the church? In my view, the role of the church is Matthew 28:19. Go and make disciples of all nations. Are churches doing that? Questionable. Are churches talking about other less sensitive issues? Yes. But what happens now, Neil, is who is going to be responsible, apart from organisations like Every Home for Christ, going out and making disciples, and I think the church has lost that, and it's going to lose that further unless some radical changes are made.
And you have not got any capacity to affect what's happening up the street in the church nearby or in the next town or the next city, but you have got capacity to worry about what you do in your own local church. And this is the challenge, isn't it? That we're all responsible for our own backyard, and hold tight to those things that Christ has given us as his mission, then we're actually doing our responsible bit. And we get to look at some statistics now and then and some surveys, and sometimes those things look negative. But to keep on keeping on where God has planted us, that's one of our challenges and one of our responsibilities.
Absolutely, Neil. As I said, I was overseas in Greece and Turkey, and we went to visit some of the sites where the Apostle Paul visited. And we had a tour guide there who was actually Turkish. And I said to my group, okay, we're going to do some prayers here. And he said, oh, no, you can't pray in here. This is a Turkish secular society. I said, well, I'm sorry. I brought my group over here to see where the Apostle Paul was imprisoned. We're going to pray, which he was very unhappy with. And I said, when I started the prayers, I said, look, if I get arrested, please come and get me. Other than that, let's just pray and think of what Paul did in his lifetime to spread the gospel and the good news And are we doing the same thing here today now?
And Greg, you're at the helm of an amazing organisation, Every Home for Christ. You've got a 50th anniversary coming up, a prayer breakfast. You know, you've got to remind people of these things, and those that have in their own hearts and minds to get involved and do something more significant than just sit around and watch the world go by. An opportunity here, 22nd of October, there's a big prayer breakfast happening.
Yes, Neil, look, thank you for raising that and reminding me, because we've got a 50th anniversary. In 1975, Every Home for Christ came into being here in Australia. We've been spreading the gospel for 50 years. But what we're doing in remembrance or to celebrate those 50 years, Neil, is I've organised a prayer breakfast, New South Wales Parliament House, dining room. And, Neil, these days, when everybody wants $1, we're providing this free of charge for people to come along. It's a prayer breakfast. We've got capacity for 200 people. And some of the speakers, Neil, are quite impressive. Dr. Reverend Ross Clifford, who you know quite well. Yes. Dick Eastman from the USA in Colorado is going to come via Zoom. Reverend Mark Leach, now, well, wow, founder of Never Again is now, you know, 7th of October, as you know, Neil, was a tragic genocide in Israel 2 years ago. So he'll be coming to speak. We've got Grace Bishop Murray Emanuel, Neil, who you will well know was the person that was attempted sort of stabbing at his local church. I've got Reverend James Dargan, Indigenous elder. So, Neil, come along. It's free. Go to our website, register. But, Neil, we've got to keep praying for both nation, for the church, and, of course, for our own salvation, Neil, as we continue to spread the good news.
You know, it is the 7th of October. It is a significant day today, and these things unfolding, you know, around the world over the next 24 hours, all the more. All sorts of protests and things planned for this weekend. Significant ultimatum that Donald Trump's been part of that with Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas agreeing to some of the terms of a possibility for the whole thing to be ended. You know, I think this still needs our prayers. What are your thoughts about what's been going on?
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. You know, there's a march planned for 12th of October here in Sydney. Look, I have a soft spot on. Look, I'm not going to deny it. Look, my nieces are both Jewish. My brother married a Jewish girl. I have a soft spot for the Israelis. I think Israel and Christianity go hand in hand, Neil, believe it or not. Christianity came out of Judaism. You know that, and I think we've got to respect that. But that aside, Neil, how insensitive for an organisation to be doing this after they murdered all these people. The genocide since the Holocaust is the highest I've ever seen. And people are marching and supporting Palestine. Neil, I'm sorry, you know, insensitive, uncalled for, and quite frankly, we all need to bow down and pray that this does not happen, Neil.
And no doubt there'll be some more conversation coming tomorrow on 2020 as well, as things begin to unfold around the world and things that are developing here in Australia too. Lots more to talk about there. Hey, Greg Bondar, thanks so much for another great update. Greg's the national spokesperson for Christian Voice Australia, and he's the national leader of Every Home for Christ in Australia. We mentioned that 50th anniversary prayer gathering. You can get some tickets, be part of that at everyhome.org.au or everyhomeforchrist.org.au. And I think it's free, isn't it, Greg? People
Absolutely.
To be a part of that prayer breakfast, and you know what an amazing.
And they get a feed.
What a great range of speakers there, and so if you're around Sydney area, that might be something to lock in. You can visit christianvoiceaustralia.com.au or everyhomeforchrist.org.au. Greg Bondar, thanks so much for another great update today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil, and God bless you.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.